Welcome to the Microcast, the short-form podcast from Microcosm Coaching, where we break down the science, strategy, and psychology behind smarter endurance training. Each week, we tackle a key concept in running, training, or recovery, and we give you practical tools you can apply right away, whether you're building back, leveling up, or chasing down a big goal. We keep it short, evidence-based, and grounded in real coaching experience. No hype, no fluff, just actionable insights to help you train sustainably and perform at your best. Let's get into it.
I'm James Nance, a running and cycling coach based out of Fort Collins, Colorado. I used to teach college mathematics, and I absolutely loved connecting with all the students, forming those relationships, seeing them learn and grow. And I no longer teach, but I kind of missed that connection component. I really enjoy working with athletes who are maybe pursuing multiple sports or are pursuing a big goal in one sport, but still want to stay in touch with their other disciplines, whether that's cycling or skiing or swimming or whatever else. I really enjoy helping athletes balance chasing a big goal in one discipline while doing things that they still really enjoy and find valuable. I love coaching athletes of any age or chasing any discipline, whether that's a road 5K or a marathon, or a cyclist who's just wants to show up and hang on a little longer during the group rides on the weekends, or whether they're training for some big endurance ride, a Grand Fondo or something like that. I really enjoy working with athletes who are maybe stuck in an injury cycle, athletes who are struggling or have struggled with relative energy deficiency in sport, red S, maybe some disordered eating, maybe some exercise dependency. I've dealt with all that stuff myself and still struggle with it every now and then, so I feel like I can relate a little more easily to those athletes. I understand what they're going through. The problems I solve best are the ones where maybe someone's overtraining, and identifying how we can right the ship, ease off the gas a little bit, in a way that still feels like they're not going from 100 miles an hour to 0 all at once. Trying to take one baby step each week or each month even, just to kind of like slowly taper things back. So if we can find one thing to tweak each week or each couple of weeks and just slowly work away, that seems to be a really impactful way to approach some of these problems. My hot take is that I don't enable any of the color coding of workouts in Training Peaks. I feel like seeing those colors, it assigns like bad to red and not good enough to yellow. And I really want to get away from that mindset, because sometimes taking a red day or skipping a workout could be you perfectly executing your training plan. If you didn't sleep well at all last night and stressing over, a big presentation at work, you're exhausted the next morning, instead of like slogging through a tough workout, you take the rest day. And that's exactly what I would want to see as a coach. What sets me apart as a coach is that I care really deeply about the athletes that I coach. They're not just a name in my Training Peaks log. I really want to get to know them as human beings. Like, what'd you do this weekend? How was that ski trip? You mentioned you had an interview for this job coming up. How's that going? I miss those connections with my students as a teacher, and I'm kind of striving for those same connections with my athletes. I help multi-sport athletes chase big goals and dreams while staying in touch with their athletic identity, whether that's running and then going on that group ride on the weekends, or doing some downhill skiing on the weekends, or whatever else that they're able to do that expresses themselves as an athlete. I help them retain that in their athletic journey.
If you want to get to know Coach James or anyone else on our staff, reach out. We have roster spots available. microcosmcoaching@gmail.com. If you're curious about coaching but don't know where to start, or you're an independent athlete who just wants a little more support, check out our Foothills tier. For just $10 a month, you get access to twice a month Ask a Coach calls, where you can talk with Microcosm coaches and ask them your questions. You can join our Slack community with over 200 other athletes to talk about training, gear, adventures, and tap into the amazing resource that is our community for whatever is coming up in your training. It's like having a coach or 8 coaches in your pocket. Use code Foothills25 for just $10 a month. Join at microcosm-coaching.com.
All right, back on the pod.
We are back.
Back in the studio.
Yeah, I was at TrailCon last week. Unfortunately, we had a few athletes there, and I missed all of them because I guess everyone was really busy. Yeah. Actually, no, I did see one athlete. Shout out, Erica. Great to meet you.
Did you see Adam?
I did see Adam, so that's two, actually.
All right.
So that's pretty solid. Shout out, Erica
not bad.
and Adam.
That's not bad.
That and 300.
Man, what was TrailCon all about? I've never been out there. I doubt any of our listeners have been out there. I could be wrong.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of like if Mardi Gras was also a Dick's Sporting Goods.
If Mardi Gras was
it's like,
I'm trying to imagine what that looks like.
It's kind of like a big party, and it's unsure if it wants to be an industry-focused event or a public-facing event. I went with Coach Kylie because we were doing some YDS activations. We have an upcoming apparel collab with Rabbit coming up, so stay tuned for that. Spoiler alert, we're producing apparel that has little pizzas and croissants baked into it.
I'm stoked for that.
I'm really
shirts.
excited. You've
That's
seen them and you like them.
Yes.
And you don't like a lot of things.
What do you mean? I like
discerning.
A lot of stuff.
You're discerning.
Yes.
You don't wear, you buy 2 shirts a year, if that. So this will be 50% of all shirts that you buy in 2026.
I mean, most of my shirts come from races swag.
Yes, that's true.
And, that's good for the environment.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, TrailCon was fine. I don't know that I would go if it wasn't my job. I did get a lot of free stuff.
You said it was a party. Are people kind of like, industry style sending it every night?
Yes. It's actually such a weird because trail running, I feel like half of people do not drink.
Right.
I feel like I tend to fall into that camp. And then the other half is like making up for lost time.
Right.
Like
I didn't drink enough beers in college.
Exactly. I got to have dinner with Scott Jurek and we shared a little Prosecco. So that was very fun.
Wow, that's so cute.
I know.
A little Prosecco.
He's so nice.
Like a small, like a 6 ounce.
Like we were both late to this dinner and like there was just a almost entirely consumed bottle of Prosecco. So me and Scotty J split that.
Finished it off.
We did.
Can't leave any soldiers out there.
Exactly.
Good for you.
But I did miss Western states because I wanted to come back to Colorado and train. It was a choice. Because I'm like, oh no, I was kidnapped from Western
you
states.
could have been out there to witness the epicness that was last Saturday.
I'm just going to be real. After, so many years of working at Trail Runner and Outside Magazine, covering races is exhausting, and I don't do it recreationally because it used to be my job, and I have pulled enough all-nighters for work in my life that I am not opting into that. And I'm also just really into my own training. I love Western States. We did watch it. I'm about it, but I also am really now boundaried in my mental, emotional, intellectual life around how much time I need to spend thinking about trail and ultra running if I'm not on the clock, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does make a lot of sense, obviously. I mean, it's kind of hard to both be fully engaged in a sporting event that takes the entire day and also be doing your training, getting the recovery.
Oh, you don't train and you don't get to recover is the thing. And that's why that's why I don't love cover. I don't love covering races because I'm sacrificing a lot of things for work. When you're crewing and pacing, you're sacrificing those things for a person you love and for a goal that you are very bought in on. So those sacrifices feel worth it. But I do feel like I spent the latter half of my 20s sacrificing everything on the altar of Trail Runner magazine, and see where that got me.
Hey, you're sitting here.
Exactly.
With the smile on your face.
I know how to set boundaries. So all of that is
you
to say.
did do your training this weekend.
Exactly. Again, I like my own running more than I like the concept of running. I'm into my own running. I'm into my athletes running. That's what I'm about
I think that's a fair take. And I like the ownership around your running. And I do think that there exists the inverse of that.
Oh, for sure. The fanboys.
Yeah, they're way more engaged in how they're like, what's going on in the race and in the pros of trail running. And then like, they're not like,
they don't run.
They're not running that much.
Yeah. I find this demographic fascinating, and there are a lot of people in the trail and run space that I'm like, do you like running? Like, again, the people really that I'm like, I have seen you put away 3 beers. Like, what's happening in your life right now? Like, you don't need to be training for something, but like, there's a lot of people that are much more, and like, I get it. We all need to have jobs, like it, whatever. But I am baffled by people who are into the industry and who are into the competitive side and don't do it themselves. Because like, to me, the magic of something like Western States is that like, you and I have both raced it. Yeah. We understand what it's like to participate. Like, you've, done CCC. Like, I would like to do CCC or UTMB someday. Like, I guess I'm only interested in things that
you like,
will do.
Yeah. Like, you want to do.
Exactly. Like, I'm not just like into it.
I'm following the pattern
here. I mean, I guess I'm like narcissistic, but also it's a participatory sport. Like, I don't watch the NFL because I don't want to get CTE from someone who has an 8th grade, education. Like, that's just where I'm at right now.
To look at this from maybe a broader lens.
Yes.
I do think if you zoom out and look at other sports, there are plenty of people out there who do not go out and shoot hoops with their friends.
I know. I find that weird. I think that watching sports is weird. I don't understand sport. I kind of like the World Cup.
Right.
I don't understand people that watch golf. I do not understand people that watch fishing. I like to watch the sports that I personally do. You watch tennis, but you also used to be a tennis pro, so it's different for you. You actually do watch a lot of tennis. Yes. So there's like, I understand there's some limitations to my argument here, but I do find I just like to watch sports.
People are just into it.
I understand that I'm in the minority. I know that I am wrong.
They like it.
Yes.
They're so into just sitting down, throwing on the YouTube live screen on their big TV at home and just watching records go down.
I'm so happy for them because they probably have more toenails than I do.
It is a long day though.
It's a long ass day. Yeah.
If you're out there and you watched every minute of that live stream, I want to hear from you. Email me, microcosmcoaching@gmail.com. What was that experience like for you? Did you miss your long run in order to watch the stream? I know I got my long run in, but I also watched the stream. I listened to the stream on the way to the trailhead, on the way back a little bit. I was following along. There was some really cool stuff going on. There was a lot of great athletes in that race. And I think it's super cool to just see where the chips end up falling in an event like that.
Yeah, I think to me, the things that stood out and that I'm like really excited about, especially as like a female ultra runner, are that I feel like there used to sort of be the sense that there was like Courtney and she was untouchable.
Yeah.
And it was Courtney and Katie and they're untouchable.
Right.
And now no one's untouchable because the whole field has accelerated.
Totally.
And that is so freaking exciting. Like seeing Jen Lichter in her debut 100 just absolutely dominate and get a CR. Like that is really cool.
Insane.
And I think that is what we really need to see in order to sort of like harness the competitive side of the sport. Because if it just feels like there's one untouchable person, that's bad. And I think that already like the outdoor and running industry has a pretty bad habit of like, there can only be one cool girl that we all like there, sort of used to only be room for one woman at the table. And now there are so many cool women who are radically reshaping the sport and the industry that I think that it's really challenging how our culture views particularly women in sport.
Yeah. I would love to see more rivalries. Honestly, I think that would be really helpful for the sport.
Yeah. Like I guess Katie, Courtney Hard Rock mashup, it will, I guess, not be happening. It seems like Katie is hurt.
Yeah, I was checking out her Strava. I don't know if she's putting everything on there, but she definitely isn't doing the amount of volume that I typically have seen.
We high-fived in Olympic Valley.
Oh,
yeah.
Cool. Well, anyways, I really enjoyed watching it also within the context of doing a lot of training over the weekend. And I know folks who listen to this podcast are interested in it. They're probably interested in our takes on those performances. My take is, fuck yeah. That was great stuff.
Yes.
I really don't have much more to offer.
Same.
I did read this morning Mario Frioli's blog post about Vincent's training.
Yeah.
And I was alarmed that guy, and I hope I'm not misquoting the blog post, but he did something like 140-mile week, 3 weeks out from the race.
That is banana pants.
I mean, it just goes to show, one, I mean, there's so many principles that he was relying on in the coaching process that we talk about all the time. Hard days hard, easy days easy, a ton of specificity. None of his long runs were like shorter than 6 hours in the 13 weeks leading up to the race.
So he probably wasn't watching a lot of live streams.
No, he probably wasn't streaming a ton. You know, he was doing his strength, he was doing his mobility, he was getting his long runs in. He was doing multiple threshold sessions a week, which I do think even in a 100-mile race, when you're that good, it probably does really support the systems he's relying on, because he's racing so high up in his zone too,
right,
for that kind of a performance. But those kind of like training volume numbers are staggering. His biggest week was 24 and a half hours of training, and
oh my God,
freaking wild to think about that. You know, those are like cyclist out training hours. And I think the takeaway for athletes is like, well, the principles that go into that are applicable to you at whatever level you're at. Not necessarily the specific 24 hours for a training week. But the hard days hard, easy days easy, listen to your body. He talked a lot about like how he was really having fun in the process.
I love that.
Yeah. And I think that's really critical, right? Like, just to take it one step further, when we talk about folks who are like kind of run a little bit, but are like really fans of the sport, maybe you're listening, doubt it.
Also a
doubt it,
choice.
doubt it. But maybe there's some one person out there. What can we do to get you to fall in love with the running process? Because that's what's gonna open doors for
That's
you.
the good shit.
Seriously.
Like, there's just no live stream in the world that can capture how freaking fun it is to run 100 miles. It is my favorite thing in the world. And, you know, I appreciate that my body and brain can't do it all the time. So each chance that I get to do that is like so special. I also just love, running is my favorite thing. Like, being able to do it for 100 miles is sick. Being able to, you know, again, coming back from injury not that long ago, I could only run for 30 minutes at a time. Also freaking sick. So an appreciation for running across the board.
Across that spectrum.
Exactly.
30 minutes all the way to 21. What's your longest 100? 25 hours?
No, 23.
23.
I've never run for more than 24 hours.
Good for you.
Yeah.
First rabbit, how fast was that?
First rabbit, 23 hours.
That was under 24?
Yeah.
Wow, super fast. All right, what are we getting into today?
So we are going to do a couple of hot or nots. We're going to answer a listener question about time-based training, but we're going to spend the bulk of this episode making fun of people who watch live streams. No, I'm just kidding. We're going to talk about heat and altitude training. Because I think that pretty much no matter where someone is this summer, they're probably going to race in heat or they're probably going to race in altitude. And if you're maybe someone like you, TJ, it might be doing a little bit of both.
You're going to get some heat, you're going to get some altitude, and hopefully, I don't know, you're not going to lose your lunch in the process.
So let's start with some hot or nots.
Okay.
I guess this sort of piggybacks on your Western States takes, but golden hour.
I love golden hour.
Same. I cry every time.
Yeah?
Freaking sweet. Yeah.
When we were out at Western States for both of our races, we went to golden hour.
You didn't want to go because you were pretty effed up.
It was tough.
We forced you and then you enjoyed it.
It was really fun to watch people, 20 whatever, how many hours into that race, working their way around, and they're around the track, and there was nothing more like tragic than seeing that person who was like 2 minutes away, but still like, fuck it, I'm gonna finish and go around the track.
Like, you still
anyways.
did the thing. Like, screw the ultra sign up score, you did the thing.
No,
and
that's badass.
I love it. Like, that is seriously one of the things that like always gets me about ultra running, is like seeing people from so many walks of life do one of the hardest things they've ever done, and all the emotions and stories that they bring to the table. Like, I've seen Jim Walmsley win Western States. I've seen Killian and Courtney win UTMB. It's extremely cool.
Yeah.
But like just watching people cross the finish line that last hour of Leadville is like truly one of the most special things I've ever experienced.
Man, a lot of heart
A
goes
lot of heart.
into being out there that long.
Yeah. So I'm uncritically hot, I guess. Yeah.
And you know
Into
what? If you're a golden hour finisher who is listening to this podcast, send us your story. We'd love to shout that out on a future episode. I think that would be really cool.
And I'll say from our perspective as elites and people trying to compete, like we, again, unless like there's been times where like I finished a race and I've been having to like lay on the couch with a bucket that I'm vomiting into. But like we always make an effort to go to the award ceremony, go to golden hour, because everyone who covers the distance deserves that attention and validation and to feel that part of the community. And I always feel like those are the experiences that fill up my cup more, like as much as, or differently than a Zoe finish. Watching other people do it is one of those things that for me really helps sustain joy in the process.
Totally. I also, I can as a coach can really relate a lot to the passion that goes into like pushing those cutoffs all day long. I coach athletes who are like that. I've been on the sidelines for those experiences, and it's super fulfilling to see that. I love watching that or being part of that journey.
Yeah, I think the coolest thing about being a coach is like you get to see someone beyond just like their splits or their race finish time, but like that like, oh my God, like they just had a kid and they've been like doing all of this work, or like they're taking care of a sick parent, or they've been like really, they've been finishing their PhD. Like you just bear witness to all of these incredible human stories. And so whenever I see someone like either standing shoulder to shoulder with me on the start line or finishing in golden hour, I just like I know that I can't access their full story, but I know that they're bringing something so amazing to the table. Like I always try to think about like all the challenges they've overcome, all the joy they've experienced, whatever they've navigated to get to that start line.
That's what makes it all worthwhile, right? That's where all the real meaning is derived. It's not just from the finish itself. It's all that context.
Exactly.
That's the real richness of the experience comes from that.
The good shit.
And I guess, man, one more note on that before I almost cut myself off. But it takes so much courage to bring that into the context of your racing.
Yeah.
Most people in life don't allow themselves to experience that. They don't go that extra step. Like when things start to feel really frictionful, they stop.
Yeah.
They stop long before they've ever truly tasted that potential. And like, if you're one of those athletes who's made the decision to like, things are hard, life context is tough, it's hard to train, I'm going to, stay in it. I'm going to keep the door open. I'm going to see what's possible. Things might look different, but I'm going to keep trying. Give yourself a pat on the back. I mean, that is not typical behavior, but that is really what we see a lot in our athletes. It's what we see a ton of in those golden hour finishers. And that's all the meaning, right? So if you're in one of those places where you're struggling with your training, life context is tough, keep going. Do the hard thing. Choose it.
For sure. And I always my heart always breaks a little bit when, maybe I'm talking with an athlete I coach, or like a lot of times it's when someone reaches out wanting coaching and like sort of like first initial contact and they're like, well, I'm not fast.
Right.
And it's like, that's not what that's not what we're interested in.
Yeah.
Right? Like I'm interested in the human. Like speed is like one tiny data point out of the bajillions that make you who you are. And like,
totally.
Sure, we'll like look at it, we'll talk about it, but it's really not the primary factor. Like when you see your athletes' names like in the Training Peaks box, you're not like fast, slow, fast, slow.
Right?
You're like, oh my God, like this person is like such a cool professor and teacher. And like, oh my God, this person just opened a bike shop and is doing like really cool things in their community. And this person has adorable dogs. Like you're relating to the person. And so I feel like being there for golden hour helps like our culture experienced that on a macro level. And I would also encourage everyone to like move beyond that like fast, slow label, because I don't think it's real or helpful, because it's all
Totally.
relative anyway.
100%. All right, golden hour, hot. Probiotics, hot or not? I'm going to let you steer the ship on this one.
We can keep this one shorter than golden hour.
You need to do a whole podcast episode on this?
I have done a whole podcast episode on this. I will link to that in the show notes and connect to it on Spotify. But there's no evidence that probiotics really moves the needle on definitely not athletic performance, and really not even like long-term health outcomes. The majority of like over-the-counter probiotics, or like from things like probiotic sodas or kombucha, those don't survive to get into your like system.
Once you consume them,
they die.
They die before getting down into the gut.
And in fact, taking over-the-counter probiotics can sometimes like actually make things worse, depending on your particular microbiome, because the microbiome is super individual. There's not like one image of like, this is a healthy microbiome.
Totally.
Like you and I might functionally both have healthy microbiomes, and the way those look might be totally, totally different. So you can't just like seed random, probiotics into that context and like assume that it'll have really any specific outcome. So the science is really not great on probiotics. I would recommend people save their money and go listen to the Your Diet Sucks episode we did on it, where I did a PCR stool test and had Kylie analyze my personal microbiome.
Wow.
That was really special.
That's fun.
Yeah, it was
Can't
really
wait
fun.
for people to listen to that.
Yep.
All right, let's talk listener questions.
Yeah. Hey, Coach Zoe, I switched from mileage to time-based training, and I'm spiraling a little bit. I live and train in the mountains, so most of my long runs are pretty steep and slow. A 3-hour run might only be 8 or 9 miles, and meanwhile, I see flatland runners logging way more volume in the same time. I keep worrying that I'm not doing enough. How do I know my time-based long runs are actually building what I need? Signed, Slow in the High Country.
Thanks for the question, Slow in the High Country. We all feel this in some way. And I think it's a really legitimate question. This is something that a lot of athletes are concerned about. And sometimes this actually leads to making bad decisions around training, to be honest. So maybe let's just start with the first thing. I think that it's important to preface this with the body does not know miles. It knows stress. So 3 hours on your feet is 3 hours of aerobic stimulus, no matter what the mileage number says.
Yeah.
No matter where you are training.
Yeah.
So that is really, really important to underscore. Pause, rewind, listen to that again. The body doesn't know miles, it knows stress. 3 hours is the same. No matter where you run, 3 hours is 3 hours.
Right. And again, like all of these things are our best tools for approximating stress or stimulus that your body's
100%.
experiencing. So, distance is a proxy. It's a pretty imperfect proxy, which is why we use time, which is also a proxy. It's a better proxy, but it's still a proxy. So your watch might be measuring distance, but your physiology is actually responding to time at a given effort. And it's important to note that vertical is volume, because climbing is real and mechanical and cardiovascular work, and the descents load your legs eccentrically in a way that flat miles just don't. So a steep mile simply costs you more physiologically than a flat mile. So you're just banking more and different types of stress per mile, not less. Even if you are, again, slower, like, yes, that pace is reduced, but pace is a pretty imperfect proxy for stimulus. Effort is a better proxy for stimulus.
Yeah. And I think you can think about it as like the flatlander has to cover more ground to get the same physiological
I love
cost.
that reframe.
You like that?
Yeah.
So
it's not that I'm slow, it's that I need fewer miles to get good.
There you go. Because you're going up and down a mountain. I mean, that's really, really hard work.
Yeah.
And slowing down on the ups is correct, right? Like that's what we do in order to ensure that we're running in zone 1, zone 2, and we're going to get those adaptations.
Yeah.
If you force extra miles to hit a specific number, if you're going harder than you should to, kind of chase those miles, you might be undermining some of that adaptation process. And in the short term, you might mentally and emotionally feel better about your training, but in the long term, you're going to be left wondering why you're on a plateau or you're not getting better. So I think for, reassurances, it's important to remember, watch the correct metrics here.
Yeah.
Time, vertical, RPE.
What advice do you have for athletes? Like if someone is doing like 15 or even like 20 miles in the mountains, that could take all day. Like what advice do you have for athletes on how to think about training like that, how to recover from it? Because, I think from my perspective, we have a lot of people who want to do these big summer adventures, which is awesome. I'm training for Soft Rock in July and I'm really pumped on that. I am not going to be setting any speed records in the San Juans. But, you can't just like go out and do an 8-hour run and be like, oh, well, it was only 16 miles. So it's really not that much.
Right. And I do think that these really, really long runs, like, rewinding and talking about Vincent's training for Western States, he was doing 6-hour long runs like every Saturday.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, we have to understand the context of that kind of volume.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we think about these principles, think about how the principles apply to you. Where's your floor?
Mm-hmm.
How many hours a week are you averaging over the last 6 months?
Yeah.
What is that relative to how long you want your long runs to be to get certain mileage goals accomplished? Well, if it's going to be, if you're only averaging 5 hours a week and then you're going out and doing 8-hour long runs, you have a massive gap between where your floor is and where that volume is on the weekend.
Right.
Some of that can be controlled for with a lot of recovery during the week. No workouts, only recovery runs, but it still does disproportionately put a lot of stress on one or two individual very, very long runs, which ups your risk for injury. When I do that kind of training with my athletes, it's only with athletes who have many years of experience.
Right.
Many, many years of experience. And it's actually, I find it, and the principles and the research supports that it's much better to actually spread that training out over many runs during the week to accumulate the same amount of volume. So you could look at like, maybe you're doing 9-hour training weeks. Like that would be a pretty ideal amount of training time each week to train for, 6 to 8 weeks before a 50K.
Right.
You're spread, maybe throughout those entire 9 hours, you're getting 30 miles or 40 miles a week because you're running in the mountains. That volume's not that high in terms of mileage, but we are actually over the course of the entire week getting in the same amount of volume as the race.
Mm-hmm.
That could be a good heuristic to look at, a good data point. Same with vert, are we spreading that out throughout the week or are we trying to get it with one hero dose? Well, it's actually better to spread that out throughout the week if you're a newer runner, beginner, intermediate.
Yeah.
I think that answered your question.
Yeah, no, that's helpful.
On that.
No, I just think, we see a lot of folks like doing these just like huge runs, and I want folks to always have a correct understanding of the stress that is, the stimulus that it is, or that it isn't, because again, I love me a mountain run.
Yeah.
You love a mountain run.
Love it.
We love a power hike, but we just have
Sure.
to have like a specific understanding of the function that's serving in our training.
Totally. And I hope this assumption is correct, but if you live in the mountains, likely you're training for mountain races.
Yes. Hopefully that's not your like javelina training.
So, like thinking about in terms of hours is going to help you. One of the ways you could also look at this, and this can be really helpful, it's more of an intermediate move, but think about what percentage. Well, first of all, think about how long do you think it will take you to accomplish your goal?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm running a 50K. It has 10,000 feet of climbing. I'm an intermediate runner. It's going to take me 9 hours.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Like, can we train for 75% of that 9-hour race over 2 days?
Mm-hmm.
So I get maybe a 4-hour run on Saturday and then a 3-hour run on Sunday. Like, we're covering a lot of ground across those two runs.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you're only doing, 9 or 10 miles on, Saturday, Well, if you're repeating that run the next day, which is much safer than doing all 8 hours at once, maybe you do another 4 hours the next day. There you go. You've got 20 miles under your belt for the weekend. And, you've probably got quite a lot of vert stacked up there. And you're starting to take big percentages off of that total volume of time for the race across a couple days.
Yeah.
So I would really recommend spreading that out rather than chasing the miles. Think about the miles accumulating over a few days or even that week, as I mentioned earlier.
Amazing. Should we talk about heat and altitude?
All right, let's do it.
All right. So I feel like everyone knows the person who has dabbled in sleeping in an altitude tent, the athlete who has gone way overboard with the heat suit, training for a hot race.
Yeah, heat suit.
And I feel like we're going to talk about the things in altitude training and heat training that work, that don't work, who should actually use these training modalities and when, and how to actually understand the science so you can apply them in your own training.
All right. So what do you think is the most important question to answer here?
Yeah, I would actually think for athletes, there are two questions that you want to ask yourself if you're thinking about doing heat or altitude training. And the first one is the environment actually a limiter for my goal? Is the race hot? Is it up high at altitude? Or is someone just chasing one of those marginal sea level bumps? Those are different problems, so they will have different answers. Is this thing that you're training for, is this actually going to be a factor in your event? Number two, and even more importantly, is my base actually built? Again, none of the stuff is going to trump consistency, sleep, good dialed in fueling and hydration, and a real aerobic base. All of those things are going to move the needle way more than any altitude or heat hack. So if your sleep, nutrition, stress management, periodization, training load, construction, mental game, if those things aren't dialed, then do not get in a sauna.
Right.
So,
it's not necessary. We have to have our base priorities for successful training already established for any protocols that give us, 1% gains to actually be helpful. I think of it as the glue that holds the training process together. Do we have good periodization? Do we have progressive overload over time? Am I eating and sleeping well? Am I doing strength? These things are the glue that holds the training together. Heat training is not a glue.
No.
Heat training is something is like the cherry you put on top.
Yeah, it's like sprinkles, which are great, and we love sprinkles, but if you don't have a cupcake to put them on, what are you doing?
They're not going to stick.
Not going to stick.
And that's an issue. And I think it's also important to recognize that these interventions are stressful. They create a lot of stress.
They have a cost. There is no neutral action in training. So for every additional stress, you must be able to account for that with additional recovery, or you lose something else.
So let's talk about what actually happens when we do adapt to heat. Can you run us through some of the science on this?
So the first thing is that your blood plasma volume will expand. So plasma is the liquid part of your blood. Within the first several days of heat exposure, your body actually holds more fluid and your plasma expands, sometimes on the scale of 5 to 15%. So if you have more plasma, that means more total blood volume. So that means bigger stroke volume and a lower heart rate for the same amount of work. So that's why a lot of times heat training can have advantages, even at a race that's not super hot, because when done correctly and applied in the right context, you can give yourself basically a bigger, more efficient delivery and cooling system.
Totally, 100%. I think one of the things that is tough about this, but requires athletes to be aware of and adjust to it, is the fact that as you become more heat adapted, you will sweat more.
That's correct.
And you will sweat earlier in your runs. So your cooling system, it becomes more efficient. So you're going to start sweating sooner, and you're going to start pumping out more sweat in order to help with evaporative cooling. And that keeps your core temperature down, but that involves adjustment. If you don't adjust to that by taking in more fluids,
you're going to have a bad time.
Then you're going to get dehydrated really quickly.
Yeah. You will also have a lower core temperature and skin temperature at more or less the same effort. So it could be the same pace, RPE, but you will have a lower internal temperature and a lower heart rate that corresponds with that. So just everything in the whole system is going to be running a little bit smoother and cooler. So we're going to talk about this in a little bit more detail, but I did want to just like go ahead and like stick this in up top, is because a lot of times I hear that heat is poor man's altitude. So
Right.
there is a similar mechanism, like that blood plasma piece does overlap with altitude blood adaptations, which is where that nickname and that idea comes from. But heat expands the liquid part of your blood, altitude adds red blood cells, and those are not the same thing. So we'll talk a little bit more about why that matters later. But I would think of these as like cousins, and I think we all need to get rid of the poor man's altitude framing because it's really just not accurate.
These guys are cousins?
Yeah.
Sounds like a bad improv joke.
Yeah. Cousins. I know. Like if I had a dime for every time someone yelled out cousins, dildo, or
Heat
horny.
suit. Heat suit.
Dude, heat suit. Yeah. Exactly. So TJ, when should people think about heat training for a specific race?
Well, if you've got that glue down,
You've got the glue. Yeah.
then we can start thinking about heat training. I mean, if you're working with me, if you're one of my athletes, we're going to have the glue.
Mhm.
And so then we can add in little extras like this that are going to make a difference. The way that I do this with athletes depends a little bit on the race.
Mm.
But since we're talking about Western states where we were, let's use that as an example, because I've
Yep.
coached, I don't know, probably a dozen people for that race at
Yeah.
this point. And every single athlete who goes to Western states does some kind of heat training protocol. One, because the race is extremely hot.
Mhm.
Two, because typically when you get into an event like this, you spend the time training and preparing for it really, really wisely.
And it's not your first rodeo.
And it's definitely not your first race. So the way that I would typically do this with an athlete doing Western states is in two phases.
Okay.
I would have an introductory phase
Mhm.
where at some point in the middle of the 12-week build to the race, we would have a deload week where then we would introduce heat training for the first time. We don't want to introduce heat training during bigger phases of training because that's going to take away from your capacity to actually work on those specific competencies.
Right.
So like if we're doing threshold work, we're not also going to be doing heat training.
Yeah.
If we're doing very, very high volume of long runs, we're not also going to be doing heat training because that's going to take away from our ability to focus on the main adaptation type in
Right.
that periodization in that block of training. But if we're deloading, we have opportunity because volume's coming down, intensity is typically coming down, and we could introduce something new to see how an athlete responds.
Mhm.
I would never do heat training with an athlete without first knowing how they respond to it because it is so individual.
Right.
You can do sauna,
Mhm.
you can do hot bath, you can do hot tub. Those are kind of like the three main like passive heat training modalities that I work with athletes with because they are typically the most like easily available,
Right.
especially hot bath. Like almost everyone has a bathtub and bathtubs get surprisingly hot.
Because
Well-
you're usually looking at like 104.
Yeah.
It's like that.
Right.
that
That's kind of the
temperature.
number. 104 and up is really great for hot bath. But we'll introduce it early, small doses, see how it feels. And then, take that information, like maybe the athlete is a really like fast responder
Mhm.
to it. Like they don't need to be in the hot bath for a long time. They start sweating profusely. The heart rate comes up. Like we can learn certain things about how they respond to it physiologically
Yeah.
and also how the nervous system responds with their feedback. And then the main bulk of the protocol, I use a 7-day protocol based on hot bath research. We'll do that in the taper for the race.
Cool.
Because volume is very low.
Yeah.
We have a little bit more time available. And typically I will, with the majority of athletes, will do a post-run hot bath routine because the core temp is already up.
Right.
So you just get right into the hot bath and we've already kind of started that process.
Right.
of producing the stress, and then we get the adaptation process happening.
Yeah. So, I think it's important to note that a lot of those adaptations fade within a week or two of stopping. Blood
They
plasma
do.
volume
You
goes
actually
down pretty
lose
fast.
a couple percentages per day
Yeah.
after a hot bath routine, which is why it's really
Yeah.
critical, the timing of that routine, to align with like having the most adaptations possible on race day.
Right. And that there is a cost, right? Because these are real stress. So you want to concentrate them on harder days, do not slot on your rest or recovery days, please, for the love of God. And remember to always treat that refueling and hydration component as part of the core session. Like you have to really prioritize the recovery.
I think one of the biggest, like this has been a hot topic for a couple years since, David Roche did his video series on training for Western states and was out running, for 20 miles in a heat suit. And then
Remember
on his
that
bike.
things that make good and compelling content don't make it good and compelling science.
And our listeners are so educated. They see through this and they know that those things are not for them, right? Hopefully. But I think it's important to make that point that kind of intervention doesn't really make scientific sense because of the alignment of stress at that time. And likely my criticism of that would probably take away from his ability to actually
have a high quality long run.
To get like the actual adaptations that are most important during that phase of training. And although, David is an extremely strong athlete who is very physiologically like advanced, right? Like he's at the highest end of the sport. 1% gains are extremely meaningful at that when you're at that level, right? To, that's what you kind of need to be able to win Western states or not. I still, if he was my athlete, I still wouldn't have prescribed the work like that, heat training like that.
Yeah, there's not great science on the heat suit thing.
No, the heat suit, or even I think it's more about how we go about putting the intervention into practice.
Right.
That can be problematic. Like what you said, hard days should be hard, easy days should be easy. I'm already doing something very hard, so I'm going to make it even harder by putting a heat suit on or something like that. It doesn't make a lot of sense because it really minimizes our ability to keep those sessions high quality, and then to continually dose it all the time likely somewhere down the line limits our ability to actually recover well. It creates more stress than is probably productive.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot to think about, how we do these things really, really matters. Especially if you're self-coaching, you're not really sure. Be really careful with those interventions.
I know that, again, I'm biased because I am a coach, but I think a better use of your time and money as a coach than weird heat training interventions. Yeah, if you're training for I'm coaching someone for bad water, obviously we're going to do some heat training. But if you're going overboard with the heat, but you're not doing the obvious stuff, like having someone help you periodize and polarize your training, that to me is a big miss. If you're trying to spend time and money, there are better ways to do it. So I did want to also address the sort of this idea of year-round heat.
Yeah. I think this definitely, this is a good moment to put that in there because some of these same folks who are very I guess big advocates of heat training also are advocates of doing it year-round. But again, I think it goes back to that same argument that okay, this is probably only going to produce marginal gains, especially for amateurs, and it's going to undermine whatever the main focus is for those periods of training.
Right. So
let me ask you this, because I keep interrupting you. I'm sorry. I just love talking.
You're our heat master.
No, what do you think is most important, right? Fitness or heat training?
Fitness.
Fitness or heat tolerance?
Fitness.
Right, exactly.
So in no world is fitness not the most important thing.
Right. So always train fitness first, right?
Yes.
Okay, take it away.
So, again, like we said, that these things decay quickly. While you do get a blood plasma bump from heat training, it decays really fast. So you have to be consistently heat training, which like
Right.
if you're like, that's really hard to do. Like I can't
Super
sustain
hard.
that in
No,
my
I
life.
freak out when I heat train. Like, it affects me so
I love heat
much.
training. I do
I
want us
do
to get a
not
sauna.
love it.
So,
Okay,
like and subscribe so that we can get a sauna sponsor.
please.
But it's basically like this consistent and ongoing recovery tax, not a one-time deposit, like a
Yeah.
more concentrated protocol. So a lot of times it just doesn't really enable people to bank the adaptations that matter. It's sort of like it's a drain. It could be a potential drain on your ability to build fitness. If you're a pro athlete and you have unlimited time and energy, this is the thing you could consider. But for like 99.99% of people, like hot tubbing and saunaing as a means of performance advantage, not a thing.
Yeah, I mean, the research really does show that with a proper hot bath protocol, after just 4 days in a row of post-run hot bath exposure,
Hmm.
you are already realizing close to 70-80% of the adaptations.
Hmm.
So it happens very, very quickly under the right conditions.
Hmm.
And so it makes sense to do it at the right time, right before a race,
And it,
rather than like
yeah,
trying to somehow maintain those adaptations intermittently, like all year long.
yeah. And you have to be really consistent. You have to be really diligent. You have to count for it in your recovery. So I think a lot of times this is really just a marginal gain that's like dressed up as a fancy
It's a nice
protocol.
story.
If
It's a
you like,
fun video.
yes, if you like getting in the sauna, great. If you like hot tubbing, great. Who doesn't love to hot tub? But again, like the year-round heat training, I don't think is like a real system that works for real people.
Let's talk altitude because obviously, these two things kind of come hand to hand and it's hand in hand and it's also summer.
You're training for Leadville.
God,
That's a pretty high race.
it's up there.
How are you thinking about altitude training?
I'm terrified of it, so I'm not thinking about it at all. I'm
Well,
just kidding.
I'll remember. So, like a few years ago in 2024, I ran Leadville,
Yes.
and I remember like the day.
You're our Leadville success story. So
Yes,
how do you
yes.
think about altitude?
Here's how I think about it. So I got second at Leadville. I remember the day before the race, like seeing like all these Instagram posts from the other like pro or elite women that were doing the race. And like everyone was like, I've been living in this Airbnb and like I changed everything about my life for this race. And I was like, oh shit, like I did not do that. Like
Yeah.
I ran up high and I ran a lot of the course and I trained really well, but I didn't have a ton of focus on altitude outside of like just race specificity and I mean, doing training that I like, which in the summer is in the mountains, but I wasn't living at altitude. I wasn't sleeping in an altitude tent. I didn't rearrange my life, and that strategy ended up working quite well, which is to say that you don't have to over index on altitude in a lot of cases. And sometimes I think people either misunderstand it and they'll be like, oh, well, I spent 3 days at altitude, so now I'm altitude trained.
Right.
Not a thing. You do kind of have to move there, but you also don't have to move there, if that makes sense.
100%. No, and I think that that's kind of the way that I'm looking at Leadville.
Mhm.
I'm trying to do my long runs on the weekends at a similar average elevation as the race.
Yeah.
Just so I can feel what that feels like.
Which is useful, I think, especially for figuring out your hydration and nutrition. And one of the like actual demonstrated advantages of training at altitude is it helps you understand what that feels like. So
Exactly.
you moderate your effort. Like doing your weekend training doesn't actually get you the specific altitude adaptations, but it helps you understand how to fuel, helps you understand how to hydrate, and it helps you understand that running at altitude feels shitty and that it's okay.
I do think that there's a neuromuscular advantage and there's also an RPE advantage
Yes,
to
because
doing
you can
those
like
runs.
put that effort in your body.
Right. You can put it in your body and you can learn how to move and feel, but you're not going to meaningfully change your physiology
No.
by doing those runs up high. I think there's two kind of camps though that I want to talk about here.
Mhm.
There's the camp of people who want to perform better at altitude.
Mhm.
And then there's the camp of folks who like want the red blood cell boost from training at altitude so
yes.
they can perform better at sea level. So there are kind of two camps
Yeah.
here.
Let's talk
What do
about
you want to go into first?
Yeah, let's talk about the evidence. So the
Okay.
way that altitude training works is
Yeah.
so the blood adaptation that we're actually talking about, the slow and real one here, at altitude there is less oxygen in the air, so less of it reaches your blood. Your kidneys can sense that and they release more EPO, which is the hormone that tells bone marrow to build more red blood cells. So more red blood cells means more hemoglobin. That's the protein that carries oxygen, which raises your endurance ceiling. So that's the adaptation that a lot of people are chasing. The big caveat here is that this adaptation is really slow and very dose dependent. So you have to be high enough, so like 2,000 to 2,500 meters, long enough, 3 to 4 weeks minimum, enough hours per day, which is more than 50% of the day. So that is a lot of time up quite high.
Yeah.
So meaningful hemoglobin gains accrue on the order of about 1% a week under a good dose. Then they decay over a few weeks once you come down. So a long weekend or 4 or 5 nights in an altitude tent isn't going to do anything for your blood. The marrow just doesn't work on that timeline. If you go spend I was hosting this training camp in Leadville and we had a lot of flatlanders. They're like, yeah, I'm going to feel so good when I go to sea level. And I'm like, well, you're just not going to feel shitty. Like right now you feel shitty.
Really like relative to how bad you feel now.
Right now what you're feeling is bad. When you go home, you're going to feel not bad, but you certainly won't feel better because your bones are going to be like, make red blood cells. And they're going to be like, oh, no, we're good. We're back in Michigan or whatever. So, one of the things that you always hear is the live high, train low.
That's my motto. That's what I live by.
And this is important because you can't train at full intensity at altitude. Like even Courtney DeWalter moved down to Buena Vista away from Leadville because your VO2 max drops about 1% for every 100 meters above about 1,500 meters. So those high quality sessions get slower and lower quality the higher you go up. Like you see sometimes especially like track runners, people that run the 400 or whatever will do concentrated altitude camps, but they don't spend more than 5 to 7 days there. So one of the ways you can approach this is the live high, train low, which is when you sleep and live high for the low oxygen stimulus, then you drop low for hard workouts to keep real intensity. Like you see runners in Flagstaff do this where they'll drive down in altitude to do their workouts. So that way
being high up really blunts your speed.
It does. And it again, I guess I don't hesitate to mention it because the science is cool, but I don't coach that many people who can literally migrate to a different ecosystem on a work day for their speed work. So
gosh.
Yes, this is a thing that works, but how does this apply to you in your life? So that's the gold standard model. Then there's the live high, train high, sort of traditional camp of you get the stimulus, but you do know that every session is going to be compromised by the thinner air. So it's simpler logistically, but going to be paid for in training quality. A lot of the times when people relocate and recovery, a lot of times when people relocate to those high places, they're training for things like the Leadville 100, like Hard Rock 100. So it's okay for us to sacrifice that top end speed because we're not going to be doing a bunch of strides to get ready for Hard Rock.
Totally. I mean, I have had athletes, and I don't know if you have also, but I've had athletes who are like, well, I work totally remote, and so I'm doing Leadville.
I have several athletes that have moved to Leadville for the summer. I'm very jealous.
I'm just going to go live in Leadville for, 2 months before, the race.
Yeah, great.
Do that. That will work.
Yeah, that works.
If you can recover up there and we can, meaningfully design the training to accommodate living at 10,000 feet. Yeah, that's going to make you feel probably pretty good on race day.
Yeah. And then, so move to Leadville, or don't do this, get a simulate altitude. So this is in the form of tents, hypoxic rooms. So those technically can work, but only with a serious and really well structured dose. So weeks of real nightly hours, not a few token nights kind of cobbled together before a race. So the majority of people who try to do this will underdose kind of badly. And I often think that what you lose in I don't want us to spend our life as a couple in a Ziploc bag.
I'm not interested in that.
Not into that.
I'm good with not being adapted.
Correct. Yeah, I'll leave some.
Forget it.
1% of 1% of 1% of a percentage point to maximize some other factors in my life. So not a huge thing. And then I think there's going to be two sort of really important details that a lot of times people just sort of gloss over, which is some people are responders and some people are not responders, because that EPO response is really varied individual to individual. Some athletes might get a big hemoglobin bump. Some people get almost nothing. It could be from the exact same stimulus. And it's really hard to actually measure how it worked. Like, I do not know how an amateur athlete would get their EPO tested to be like, is my altitude camp working?
I think it could be a feeling.
Yeah. Yes.
I've noticed this in myself, that if I do some training sessions very high up, I tend to, in the week after, feel exponentially better in my training. I feel like someone gave me a piece of research that corroborated that. I don't know where that is. I would love to link to it in the show notes. I'll text the guy who sent that to me to see if he still has it. But I thought that was really interesting because I always feel terrible on those first few sessions up high.
Yeah.
And then infinitely better after. And I'm somebody who has been on 6,000 meter peaks.
Right.
And like really adapted quite quickly to those situations. And I've always thought that was interesting for me, but I've always based it on a feeling.
There is a lot of individual response when it comes to altitude, and a lot of it is genetic. But I would say that most likely in those circumstances, it's not like, I mean, you're not actually adapting faster.
It's not an adaptation.
You're reacting less shittily,
maybe
slowly.
Totally.
And like, again, because none of the physiology, like you literally, just like the time scale that like it doesn't actually happen.
No, you don't have the timeline.
You're good at reading your body and responding and moderating your effort accordingly and taking care of yourself.
I'm really good at going slow.
You are. So true. I always think of you as a slow athlete.
I'm a very slow walker.
You are an excruciating. It's honestly, it's like the worst part of it.
No one walks slower than me.
No one walks slower than you. In the airport, we'll get lapped by like literal toddlers pulling like Disney suitcases.
I'm getting my Z1 in.
It kills me. It's like Z-3. It's instant. Like if it was any slower, you'd be going backwards and like distorting the space-time continuum.
Before we go totally off the rails with my slowness, slow walk,
it's unreal.
I want to mention
my mom complains about it.
My
parents are fast walkers.
They're on a mission.
They're very into they Strava their walks, and they're very into their brisk walks. They love a brisk walk.
Oh my gosh.
We actually had joked like what would happen if we just like didn't tell my parents what hard rock was. We just kind of like put them on the course and we're like, go.
They might finish.
I think they might.
They might. They've got a good chance at it.
Yeah.
They could definitely walk 100 miles.
They could definitely walk 100 miles.
But here's the non-negotiable part of this that we almost glossed over. Mm-hmm. Iron is really, really key.
That's really important.
Ferritin levels are really, really important in this equation, in this conversation. So if you're racing up high, check those ferritin levels.
Mm-hmm.
That's absolutely critical. I think if you're below something like 40, you're really gonna struggle at altitude.
Go through, and you can work with Coach Kylie, or you can just go through Quest Diagnostics and like order it yourself. Skip the expensive inside tracker stuff and just like
just get a single
DIY it. So the big thing that like we see with folks is like how do you time altitude for high altitude races? So either get there 21 days ahead of time or 24 hours is the rule of thumb. That way, like 21 days, you can actually adapt. 24 hours, well, you're not going to adapt, but you're not going to experience the negative consequences of under recovery at altitude, which is tough because a lot of times just because of the logistics of racing, people want to show up a couple days early for like packet pickup and whatnot.
Yeah.
But we really discourage like going 5-7 days ahead of time because that's like just enough time to feel pretty bad without any time to adapt.
Definitely avoid the middle.
Avoid that messy
like a week
middle.
Before. Forget that. They'll just come 2 days early.
Yeah. So I think that these are interventions that sometimes people can get just like really attached to unnecessarily. And again, we're not saying throw them out the window. If you're, if you live in Dallas and you're training for Leadville, like Godspeed. Glad I'm not working with you right now, but there's always a way. But, a lot of times people over obsess on these things to the detriment of their overall fitness and training quality. So for a lot of runners who are either racing in the heat or racing up high, a lot of times you just don't want to over index on these solutions because the hierarchy of what moves the needle is always going to be those boring things that we come back to over and over again before these like specific environmental tools come into the equation. So train consistently, week after week, without the wheels falling off. Get your training dialed, work with a coach, make sure it's periodized, polarized, and that you have progressive overreach.
Yeah, love it. Hope you guys found that conversation interesting. I know every year when we talk about this, it's a good refresher for me.
Yeah.
Good refresher for you, Zoe. But as always, we love to hear from you guys. Tell us what you're training for. Send us your questions. Get involved with the community. Microcosm Coaching at gmail.com, microcosm-coaching.com. And we can't wait to see you next week.